So as far as some of the strengths, when it comes to interviews, right? Dress appropriately. Probably business casual, look put together. We're going to talk about a few specific examples. Ask specific questions, right? So make sure they see that you're interested in it as well. And if you really, this is a job that you truly do want, I think some questions will come up kind of naturally that you hopefully want the answers to because you are engaged in that position. And if you literally are like, I have no questions, it might be a moment for you to kind of reflect. Why do you want this, job? Why do you want to spend, whatever 40 hours at this job? A little moment for reflection. Obviously, be honest. It's okay if you don't know quite the answer or you haven't had that experience. Like, it's okay to say that. And I know when I would interview folks, especially like students, when I'd interview interns, sometimes I was low-key looking for that to see, do they know their own gaps? And then, are they going to be willing to admit that, acknowledge that, and then figure out a way to move forward? Because, I don't want somebody who just thinks that they know absolutely everything and then might not be trainable or might not be willing and open to, come work with me or see me if something does go wrong. So just be honest. You want to have a good fit for them and for yourself. And so we kind of see a little theme of asking questions. So we are going to get into that before we wrap up today. Now, a few things that our partners wanted to make sure we shared with you to avoid. Don't be condescending, obviously, right? There's that fine line between being confident, knowing your value, knowing your worth, knowing your skills, and sort of talking down to people or being, maybe too prideful, boastful. So you just want to walk that line, and the best way to figure that out is to practice interviewing, practice describing yourself with your friends, pick people that are going to be honest with you. I'm sure we all have someone in our life that we love them because they will tell you the truth no matter what. So maybe practice responding and describing yourself with that person so you can find that line. Being too short with your answers, right? Don't give a yes, no. Use the stories that you identified that we've been talking about and practicing to make sure that you can expand and really show them what it is that you know and can do. Yeah, well, don't show up late, don't make them wait, be early. That's always good. I've definitely gone to interviews very early and then sat in my car, right? I was nervous. Am I going to find the building? Am I going to find parking? And so I would kind of plan to be almost 20 minutes early, but then I'm not going to walk in there 20 minutes early. Instead I, hung out in my car until it was about 10 minutes and then walked up to the office. So just kind of give yourself plenty of that buffer time so that way you're not showing up late. Although the last interviews I've done have all been on Zoom. And in that case, I was ready about 10 minutes at my computer, kind of testing things, and then actually logged on to the call about 4 to 5 minutes early, just to make sure I'm not creeping on them, probably prepping their side of the interview as well. All right, so let's talk about some clothes. I have a few examples from me and my partner's sort of sim me. Biggest rule of thumb, just keep it simple, professional. When in doubt, simple, clean, tidy, professional. If you don't have a lot of kind of professional or business clothes, know that at UCCS you can go to the Career Innovation Center. They do have a career closet where you actually can take clothes and you don't have to return them. You can take, I think it was 7 pieces of clothing a semester. And so that's a great place where you can find, a nice blazer, or you could find, maybe a little nice dress or a tie, because business clothes are frankly kind of expensive. They certainly can be. They're a bit of an investment. And so we do have that career closet on campus to help get you some of those clothes for your interviews. So first option, You can never really go wrong with a nice blazer. So some things just to keep in mind. Show your face. If you have, longer hair, you might think about just pulling it back so that way it's not, in your eyes, in your face, right? We want, as interviewers, right? I want to be able to see kind of your expression, your reaction. And I don't want you to kind of be hiding right behind a bunch of hair. So, just pull it back out of the way so you don't have to worry about it. If you have facial hair, I'd say just keep it, trimmed and tidy and either commit. So definitely, I don't want to see like sort of a 5 o'clock shadow situation either. You have facial hair, right? It's grown out and then you've trimmed it. The edges are nice, crisp, clean, or go completely clean shaven. If you're kind of in that in-between stage, it's just going to look like you didn't bother to clean up for the interview. So either commit or keep it clean. You also want to think about things like the small details. So I like to paint my nails. I always have since high school, but certainly when I'm about to give an interview, I go back and just make sure that I have a pretty neutral color, tans and browns and, just like very neutral colors, right? This is not the time where I put bright blue right on my fingers, and make sure that it is also nicely done. I don't want lots of chipping. Again, that's just small details that might communicate, hey, they aren't really paying attention to, the details and sort of bringing their best self forward. And then underneath your blazer, a solid button up is always going to be that nice, neutral, polished kind of look. If it's not a button up, just a really nice kind of blouse and a solid, fabric are just going to be good, kind of can never go wrong sort of options for you to think about. Again, keep it fairly neutral. You could show a little personality, right? Maybe a little pop of color here or there, but make sure it's just not distracting for sure. So the other option, if you're like blazers, not really my thing, or you are applying for a company that you think is a little bit more casual, right? So if you are applying for, more of these kind of military affiliated positions and contracts, like you're going to want to definitely go much more dressed up and for sure, very least have your blazer. You might even need a tie for some of those much more those types of jobs. But if you are applying to maybe work with a bunch of engineers and just doing their, startup documentation, they might be a lot more cash and they might give you a weird look if you show up too overdressed. So in this case, you might go a little bit more casual, but still polished, right? So if you're going to be wearing like a sweater, make sure it is a pretty, kind of nice, a little bit posh sweater, have a nice shirt underneath, and then slacks. Easiest way to dress up kind of an otherwise pretty casual, top would be wearing a nice pair of slacks, kind of elevated a little bit. You can also, this is a great place if you choose to wear like a dress that maybe you give a little bit of an accent, have a nice belt that shows off, a little bit more of your personality, but overall is still just a nice polished kind of refined look. The goal here is to basically not distract or draw too much attention with what you're wearing, right? We want them to pay attention to our words, right? Our stories, our kind of like personality and self, and not be like, oh, like what are they wearing, right? Neutral clothes so that way you shine as that focal point. And then when it comes to shoes, again, neutral and comfortable. Now, comfortable doesn't mean, tennis shoes, right? We do want to be still polished, but definitely pick shoes that maybe you've worn before to make sure they are going to be fairly comfortable. The biggest thing that I would definitely see with some interviews, it's like, wow, I could tell those are like brand new like clothes, or this is something they don't wear often because they were kind of picking at it and fidgeting and just looked uncomfortable. So you do want to make sure you look really polished, but have a sense of comfort and sense of self. So that way you can be your most confident and you're not like, fidgeting and, looking just really, really uncomfortable with what you are wearing. Yeah. All right, so you showed up, you have a great fit, you're comfortable, you're confident, you're polished, you match the company culture, you maybe looked at some photos, saw what other people were wearing, you're on time, you're ready in the interview. Now, Dr. McMichael is going to talk you through some great tips for actually sharing your portfolio in an interview, which is definitely a place where you'll need to discuss the examples that you attached to your resume.
So when you bring in that portfolio, when you show them the portfolio, they are likely to spend some time asking you some questions. They want to see, first off, you want to bring in if you are later, if you've been in like 3 or 4 or 5 classes, you should already be starting on portfolio, at least have a very basic one available. If you're brand new and you're trying to get an internship, you can just bring in a few examples. Still, though, if you know that, I don't know if you know this, but in 3160, we start the portfolio. That class is not required, however. So if you don't take 3160, you should take the time to start your portfolio now. Do not wait to the last semester. You want to have started it 2 or 3 years before you graduate. Okay, so when you walk in there, be prepared to discuss that in detail. They're going to ask you things like, who was your audience? Why did you create this? What were any outside influences? They're going to ask you about that creation process. How did you get it started? How did you decide what to write? How did you learn about the genre? All of these kind of things. If you worked with a team, what kind of issues did you have and how did you overcome them? What kind of successes did you have? How did it work? What was your part in the team? Working with clients, same kind of deal. What kind of issues do you have? And believe me, you're likely to have issues with clients. Successes, how did you overcome this stuff? How did you move through? How did your group with that client? And also technology. What technology did you use? How did you decide to use it? What kind of problems did you run into? How did you, fix those problems? And how did you get beyond it? The reason they do this, there's a few things. They want to know how you think. They want to know how what your thought process is, and if you fit in with their group. They want to see examples of their experience. They don't want you to just say, I know how to write concisely. They want to see something that shows you can write concisely. They want to know how you approach technology. If you're claiming to be technologically adaptable, they want to see examples that show that you're technologically adaptable. So they want a technology-rich portfolio. If you are, going into something like UX, they want to see examples that you've actually done some of this work that you're saying you have skill in. And finally, they want to know that you've actually created these pieces. I've heard more than one story about somebody coming into an interview and the other person either being the person interviewing, being the one who actually created the piece or knowing who actually created the piece. So, make sure they're your pieces and you actually know the whole process.
Yes, don't get caught out here lying. Like, let's just, you've done the work. Show off your work. And a portfolio is such a great thing to also remember to keep updating. Like, I know I'm very guilty of this. I have not actually updated my portfolio in a minute. So I'm looking forward to over winter break, adding some new things, refreshing the content. And it's something that we want to continue to keep building as you're a student and even as you're into these new jobs. So that way you're always prepared, for the next step and prepared to share it with the most updated content. Cool. So a few things that our partners talked about in an interview that are really negative, and we don't want to exaggerate, our skill set. We also don't want to just be like, yes, yes, yes to everything, because we don't agree and we don't know and we aren't completely versed in every single thing, right? Instead, we want to be just honest and try to fit in with that culture as you're trying to see, are you a good fit and are they a good fit for you? Other things that they kind of talk about, things like not practicing. I loved this recommendation that one of our partners offered. Record yourself, right? Answer some of these common questions, record yourself doing it, and then listen back just so you can really tell, wait, what is it that I said? Did I actually explain the story in the way that I wanted? And having some of that practice in just expressing ourselves, expressing our experiences is actually a really tough skill set that literally requires some practice to build up. Otherwise, yeah, I think it's things that we probably intuitively know just by being sort of folks in an interpersonal, communication focused field. So the things that you can control, certainly be on time, figure out what it is that you want to wear, and just practice expressing the specific stories, coming up with examples that you know are going to really show them the answers to their questions. And so let's talk about questions that you should ask them. Because again, this is a two-way road. They want to know that you are engaged and that you are serious about the job and the offer. It is super annoying on the hiring side. I've gone through this a lot where you're like, okay, yeah, I think this person could be great. And then you offer them the job and then they either quit within like 6 months, and sometimes you got to do it, but then I have to start all over. And it's like, I wish that I had, selected somebody who, was maybe a little bit more invested and had asked more questions to make sure we were going to be a good fit. So that way we aren't constantly hiring new folks, or you offer them the job and then they say no. Now, just because you get offered the job doesn't mean you have to say yes. Like, you do have that empowered, abilities, but just make sure you're asking the question so that way it's going to be a good fit and that's going to help out the company as well. So some things that you could ask about the culture, right? For me, at one internship, they had constant social gatherings. I want to like my coworkers. Like, I'm a social person, but also I'm kind of an introvert in the sense that I like to be alone and chill out. And so ever since then, I specifically ask in every interview, like, how often do you expect your employees to meet up and go out? Because I really disliked that culture so much as that intern. And so you got to kind of figure out what is your fit, what is your expectation, and learn a little bit more about the company. You might ask, what are the measures for success? What is evaluations going to look like? To, again, show them that you are really thinking about how successful you might be in this position, that you understand the position you're applying for, and then that you know what your expectations will be if you get this job and how you're going to be reviewed for your performance. You might also ask about, opportunities for growth, right? Is this a position that is kind of the top of what they have to offer? Doesn't mean you shouldn't take it, especially some of your, early career positions. Great place for experience. But as you start thinking long term, are you going to be able to stick with this company and still, grow and move up? Or is there not really a path for that? And then last, it can be good to just ask about the day-to-day. So you know what you're signing up for, right? These career positions, you're going to be spending 40 plus hours a week. Make sure you know what your day is kind of going to look like. So those 4 areas is what gets you to know, this is the job for me, or maybe this is not quite the right fit for you. And so just as we kind of wrap up here, just kind of wondering, what is like one question you might ask a company, like out of culture or success opportunities? Like, what's a question you would want to know, or a question you have asked if you have gotten an internship before that helped you learn more about that company? Ooh, that is a great one. Yes, so glad you asked, because they are, right? Some companies and some positions you might actually be exempt from overtime, right? They might just be like, nah, it's just part of your salary. Other places might give you, right, time and a half or something for overtime. Some companies might be like, yeah, we really expect everybody to actually work 9, maybe 10 hours a day unofficially. And if that's not your vibe, you need to know that going into it. So that's a great question.
Also be careful with how they answer this. Try to read between the lines. If they say something like, well, we expect people to work overtime right before we have a launch, and they have a launch every month, then you may end up working overtime the majority of the time. So do be careful about how they're answering that question.
Yes, absolutely. Pay attention to what they say. Oh, especially the community culture. Again, you want to find a place where you are also going to see yourself fitting in. And kind of similar, when you ask this question, if you're in a hiring committee, with multiple people, which like ideally you'll have more than one person interviewing you, at least at that first stage. I always like to pay attention to how they interact with each other when you ask a question like this, Are they kind of like looking around like, ooh, like what is okay to say? Or do they feel pretty free in answering? And does it seem genuine and honest can tell you a lot too. Yeah, benefits. Things like benefits often you can find sometimes published online. It's definitely an important thing to know. It might not be the best question at like the first round interview, but definitely is something that you want to know about, before you accept a job, if that's, going to be important. And often benefits leave is an important kind of make or break for how that job feels.
Be careful too, in this situation, they might require a non-disclosure agreement, just talking about your benefits, especially when we're in a market like we are right now, where there's more jobs than people, because they don't want their competitors to know what they're giving out. So it may be that you're not allowed to talk about what benefits you get when you're coming into the company. So just be conscious of that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Cool. These are all great things to be thinking about to help you know, is this going to be a good fit? Now, we ran down on time a little bit from the great questions and discussion earlier, but just know we do have some opportunities for mock interviews. Why do you want to, plug what's going to come up for your mock interview opportunities?
So some of the faculty and some of our partners out there in industry are going to provide opportunities for mock interview. What these will look like is you will get on a Zoom call with 2 or 3 people, and you're supposed to practice dressing appropriately, speaking appropriately, and we will just basically take you through an interview. If you've never had an interview before, this is a very good idea. We also are likely to do throw you some curveballs that you might get in an uncomfortable interview or one that's very challenging, so that you can be prepared for those kind of situations. So please do let me know, or let Haley know if you're interested, because we want to make sure we can get that set up and find a time that will work for you and for our partners. We definitely want to have at least one partner, maybe even 2 in there. And you never know, they may actually be looking for an intern, so that when you get out of this mock interview, you may actually have the opportunity to get a job in the process.
We love that for you. So I know many of you marked, yeah, I'm interested in the mock interviews on your registration form, so we'll be in touch soon. But if you didn't mark that, go back, submit another form. Let us know that this is something you want to do. And if you have, friends that you're like, they would definitely benefit, let them know about it as well. Just some last advice. Obviously, networking, all of our kind of partners are like, yeah, going to events, trying to connect with people on LinkedIn can definitely go a long way and be really helpful. I also liked non-traditional applications, right? So some of the things that you picked up, even from our examples in the group I went into, right? You're like, oh, that's definitely not traditional to have hyperlinks to aspects of your portfolio. We're in a cool technical creative field where we have some place to experiment with that. And so you can think about slightly less traditional apps, though, again, be aware of where you're applying and the type of industry and company and vibe. Some places, looking at our friends of the military, like they probably want it to be very traditional and up to that kind of expectation. If you're applying for more startups, there's a lot more room to kind of try some different things and see how it goes. Yeah. And I love this one as well. Don't get discouraged. And I just was helping one of my friends. He's an engineer. He applied for 80 jobs before he got an interview, and he definitely started to get a little discouraged. But honestly, that's just kind of how long it takes. And at first he's like, well, I applied for like 10 and I haven't heard back. And I was like, dude, we got to get some more. Like you got to like triple that before you start really getting too discouraged. So just know it is going to take some time. And sometimes it takes a long time to hear back also, like just because it's been a month. Again, being on the hiring side, sometimes we're like, well, we said we were going to close it at this date, but then we extend it 2 or 3 weeks because someone's on vacation, yada, yada. There's a lot of weird stuff on the back end. So just give it some time, start early before you know you need or ideally would like to be employed.
And if you graduate and you don't have, you haven't found a job and you're still looking, what you might do too is try to pick up some volunteer situations, because you never know in those volunteer situations if you might run into somebody who's, wife is the hiring manager over at this other company, or and if nothing else, you're getting experience and building that portfolio as you're sitting there doing the work. So, and also volunteering rebuilds that self-esteem. Looking for a job is a soul-sucking experience. It just is. You're getting critiqued constantly. You're putting yourself out there. You feel vulnerable, and volunteering can actually rebuild that that self-esteem.
Absolutely, right? Don't get just too discouraged. Like Lonnie said, it is really exhausting to be in the job hunting market. But you have the skill, you have the value, you are great, amazing, creative, innovative people. You will find, the place where you can show that, but it takes some time, build in some self-care. You got this. And I'm so glad to see most of you are like, yeah, smiley face. With these tips, I hope that you can go back, revisit, revise your documents, get you to that I love my resume. I am so excited for this interview kind of stage. And remember, these are living documents that you can and should and need to keep on updating that. And with that, I just really, really appreciate that all of you joined us this morning. If there's any kind of last questions, absolutely, I'd love to hear them. You can drop them in the chat or unmute. Otherwise, thank you. Thank you for investing in yourself. I know 2 hours, feels like it is a long time on a Saturday. So thank you for investing in yourself and joining us. I hope that I get to meet more of you, maybe on campus and around, hopefully maybe some classes if you're not graduating quite yet. And please let us know what questions that you have.
And feel welcome to email us after this if you have questions come up in your process. If something comes up, even if after you've left school, I still have students come back and talk to us, a semester or 2 after they've left. So feel free to at any point ask us questions about this process.
We're here for you. All right, y'all.